What's going on, everyone? This is Lucas Ross Sports and Lucas Ross, your commentator. We continue our 2022 college football predictions. The Alabama Crimson Tide are up next. We will give you an official game-by-game prediction, go through the schedule, and give you an official record, and we will go from there. But before we do that, let's look back at 2021 for this Alabama team. 2021, Alabama went 13-2. They ended up going to the national championship game, lost to Georgia, though, in the last national championship game of the regular season in the game there. Alabama, offensively and defensively, their rankings were really good. This was a good Alabama team. They lost to Texas A&M in the regular season. They lost, they had an up-and-down year, but they got better at the end of the year, but they did end up winning the SEC championship. The offense was ranked 6th in the country last year on offense. Really good offensive team last year. Defensively, 18th. Defense was really wanted to improve that this year. The defense has a lot to improve as well this year as well. Points per game, 39.9 points a game last year on offense. Points per game overall, 39.9. Opponents, 20.1 points a game last year given up by the defense. The defense was okay, but they just want something to improve on that. So Alabama, though, the overall production is really good. Offensively, they're going to be a little bit young, but they still should be really good. Bryce Young is back at quarterback. So, Bryce Young had a pretty good, after winning the Heisman in his first year at quarterback, that's really good. That's a really good accomplishment for Alabama. Defensively, they're going to be really good. They've got quite a defense coming back this year. The offense, the overall, production should be really good for Alabama in 2022. And here's that schedule for 2022 for Alabama. There's that opening game against Utah State on September the 3rd. This is not going to be a game that really Alabama scores 50-something points. I think it's probably going to be like maybe 40-something, maybe 30-something. This is a game that Utah State's actually a really good group of 5 team. I've heard about them a little bit. They're a group of 5 team that is really capable of, keeping Alabama under, 40 points in this one. Utah State, it's Utah State. Alabama should take care of business. They have no reason to lose this game, and I think they will win this one. Not by a blowout, probably by a blowout, but it's a game that Alabama should take care of business. It's not a game that Alabama should really lose. And then there's that game against Texas on the road on September 10th. Probably the biggest game in week number 2. I don't really know. Texas, though, is going to be a team that really everybody wants to know if they're going to be good. Texas does really bring quite a lot from last year, quite a little bit. They were not really that great last year. Texas had a downfall year. But this game is at home for Texas. On the road, though, Alabama is just really too talented. This game will be close probably in the first half. Second half, I think Alabama's defense will step up, and I think the offense will take care of business. And I think Alabama does win this one, not by a blowout. It will be a close game, probably through the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, I think Alabama really gassed Texas out. So I think Texas will come up short in this one, and then Alabama takes care of UL Monroe on September 17th. And then there's that game. They open up SEC play with Vanderbilt on September 24th. Vanderbilt, a lot of question marks on their side of the ball this year. Both sides of the ball really for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt really hasn't been that good for the last few years. It seems like Alabama, Vanderbilt has just not been really able to compete with the SEC at all. Alabama, though, they get a really easy draw out of the SEC East this year. There's that Vanderbilt game and then Tennessee. We'll get to the Tennessee game in a minute, but Vanderbilt, though, is a team that just has a lot of question marks, and I think that's why Alabama will come into this game really fired up, and I think they will kick off SEC play with a win. Vanderbilt's just not really that good of a team, let's be honest. They have a lot of question marks on both sides of the ball, and Vanderbilt still has a long way to go before they can really get back into SEC winning ways. October 1st at Arkansas, this is their next game here for Alabama. Arkansas going to be a really interesting team this year. They were really an interesting team last year, one of the underdogs in the SEC West. Arkansas expected to be really good again, but is Arkansas going to be able to pull off an upset here? Is an upset potentially happening? Probably not. I would see this one just being a 2-touchdown win for Alabama. but I don't think it's a game that Arkansas maybe potentially does upset Alabama. But it could happen. You never know. But this game will be, maybe close in the first half. Second half, I think Alabama's just going to really own Arkansas to the final whistle here. And I think it's going to be it. I think Alabama does win this one on the road at Arkansas. I mean, it's not going to be a blowout. Let's be honest. It's not going to be a blowout. Alabama will have some tough games in the first half, I think, this season, but they will pull away with their second half like they always do. October 8th, though, this is a revenge game. Texas A&M. We saw what happened last year. A&M was able to be the only team that defeated Alabama in the regular season last year. It was the first time that Alabama lost to a former assistant as well, and that's really interesting to me. Nick Saban, has done a good job of beating his former assistants, but Jimbo Fisher was able to get it done. Texas A&M beat Alabama last year. This year, could it happen again? I don't really see it happening. I think Texas A&M is a little bit behind a little bit. I know they're the number one ranked recruiting class this year, but for Texas A&M, this game, if this one was at home, I would give A&M probably the win. But Bryce Young is back, and I think he's going to play better than he did last year. I think Alabama will win this game. I think with it being at home, it's a revenge game that Alabama can rebuild on, redeem themselves, and they will stay undefeated. So that game won't be easy, though. It might be a defensive battle throughout the entire game. Alabama will probably be there until the fourth quarter, and then I think Alabama just pulls away. And then the next game is on the road at Tennessee, October the 15th. Rivalry game here. Let's think about this rivalry for a second, though. Alabama has owned Tennessee in the last few years. I don't know how long, I don't know how many years it's been since Tennessee has defeated Alabama, but it's been a long time. It's been a long time that Alabama was last lost to Tennessee. I mean, it's been a long time coming. Tennessee used to dominate this rivalry, and now Alabama, with Nick Saban around, he's just been dominating Tennessee. And I think that happens again. I think Alabama does win this game, but it's probably going to go into the fourth quarter. I think it's going to happen. I mean, you don't really see it happening a little bit, but Alabama does win this game on the road at Tennessee. It's not going to be an easy game. Tennessee has an explosive offense. Hendon Hooker back at quarterback. He's a winning guy. I mean, I could see him being a Heisman contender. You never know. It could happen. But this one being on the road, it will be a close game. If it was at home for Alabama, it wouldn't probably be all that close, but it was really close last year. Tennessee gave Alabama a little bit of a scare, but there's still plenty of things to build on at Tennessee. A lot of things are really happening there at Tennessee right now. People are really hyped on this team, but I think Alabama is too talented, and I think they will get the win. Next game is against Mississippi State at home. Mississippi State does return really good production this year, but Alabama has owned Mississippi State in the last few years as well. I mean, when you think about Alabama and Mississippi State playing, Mississippi State just really cannot get close with Alabama at all. If this game was at home for Mississippi State, I would choose probably a potential upset. But with this being at home, Alabama will get the win. I think it's going to not be a blowout, but I think Mississippi State will hang in there maybe the first half. Mississippi State does return a great defense this year. They're going to be really talented on that side of the ball, but Alabama will just win this game, and I think they will pull away in this one as well. And there's that game against LSU on the road. You get back-to-back road games here, LSU and Ole Miss. Let's talk about LSU first. LSU was really the only team last year that really smoked Alabama's offensive line. LSU, though, they're a team this year with a lot of question marks. You know, they have a different coaching staff, different coach, a lot of expectations around that program. But LSU, it starts with recruiting. It starts with recruiting, and I think that's why Alabama, I think it's going to be a defensive battle the whole way, like it is always every year. Alabama gets a bye week before playing this game, and I think it's going to wind up being a win for Alabama in this one. LSU, I just think, has no chance of beating Alabama this year. I mean, it's in Death Valley. Yes, it is in Death Valley, but it's not going to be a win there. I think, it's going to be close, but I think Alabama will pull away maybe in the second half. I mean, there's probably something going to happen there as well. And then there's that game against Ole Miss on the road. Back-to-back road games, Ole Miss now. We saw what Ole Miss was last year. Ole Miss didn't really get anywhere close to beating Alabama. The defense really stepped up for Alabama last year. Ole Miss has a lot of question marks on offense. They do lose Matt Corral on offense. But this should be still a great Ole Miss team. They should still be good enough to really score points on this Alabama team. I don't think it's going to be enough. I think Alabama will win this game. I just think the defense is going to be better by this time in November. And I also get Alabama a win there against Austin Peay. And there's that final home game, the Iron Bowl against Auburn. We know Alabama and Auburn have had fair share of close matchups in the past, but who knows what Auburn's going to look like. Auburn really only returns half of their starters back from last year. I mean, they lose Bo Nix. There's a lot of question marks surrounding Auburn. This game went into overtimes last year. Alabama was able to come away with the win. And with this one being at home, I don't really see it being a blowout, but I think Alabama just goes ahead and really finishes the season strong. Auburn just has a lot of question marks. I just don't really see Auburn really competing. Maybe in the first half they will compete, but the second half it's all Crimson Tide. And Alabama's total record for 2022 comes out to be 12-0. I know Alabama, I predict them to go 12-0 last year, but the schedule just really sets up nicely for them. They don't really have a tough game in November, or actually September, but that game against Texas is probably their toughest one. October, Texas A&M and Tennessee could potentially be losses, but, you know, LSU and Ole Miss, those are two back-to-back tough road games, but Alabama still really is capable of finishing 12-0. I want to let you guys know what you think about this Alabama team in the comments below. Give me your thoughts on this team as well in the comments, and we'll continue to do more football predictions starting next Monday. And stay tuned here for more on Lucas Ross Sports.